Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's Daily Global COVID-19 Show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this daily conversation around all things COVID-19. We discuss different aspects of the pandemic, the health, financial, and inequality crises. We are also talking about ways in which we can understand what's going on so that people can get back on their feet in the US and around the world. Today is episode 216, 216 episodes in 216 days with a very important topic, restaurants under COVID. And we have two experts here with us, Russell Jackson, chef and owner of Reverence, a restaurant in Harlem, and Michael Kaufman, senior lecturer at Harvard and former chairman of the board of the National Restaurant Association. These are part of the Stony Brook journalism episodes. My students at Stony Brook School of Journalism are producing several episodes of the show as part of our Digital Innovations in Journalism course. This episode is produced by Fanni, Frankl, Iryna, Shkurhan, and Hyoju Kim and Nick Cipolla. We're very grateful to them. You'll be meeting Fanni and Michael and Russell in just a few moments. Hi, everybody. They're all here. Let me bring them on to just say hello to all of you in just a minute. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for watching. I'm Sree Sreenivasan, the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook. I'm the co-founder of Digimentors, a social, digital, and virtual events consulting company. If you haven't seen our show before, in our first 215 episodes, we've had 1 million plus viewers, 386 guests, of them 228 have been women from 68 cities and 20 countries, including the chief scientist of the World Health Organization. Our archives are at youtube.com/Sreenet, and we're in partnership with Scroll Global and Scroll.in. We're able to do this because of our awesome sponsors and our awesome producers, Rose Horowitz at Rose Horowitz 31 and Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon. Let me bring our guests on so they can say hello to you and talk to you about what's happening in the restaurant business. And we're just so grateful to them for being here and giving us time on a Monday evening. And hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. My first question always is, how are you? Where are you? And how's your family handling the pandemic? I'll start with our student, who's going to be the tougher questioner here. So we'll start with Fanni Frankl. Fanni?
Hi. Yes, my name is Fanni Frankl, and I'm doing well. My family has held up during the pandemic. I'm currently dorming at Stony Brook University, and nothing of sorts really happened to my family. Thank God they're all healthy. So that's all I have to say.
That's great. Let's go to Russell.
Hi. Russell Jackson here. I am actually here in my restaurant in Harlem, New York, at 138th and Frederick Douglass, in the 150-year-old historic landmark building on Stryber's Road. My family is great, and obviously I'm not there with them because I have an 18-month-old son that is happily sleeping, and nothing more annoying than daddy yelling at the TV.
That's what he thinks this is. Well, it's very sweet. 18 months. It must have been hard to, be with, to keep him safe and worrying about that all the time, right?
It's been really super challenging, and especially in the early days during that great period where we really had no inclination as to what was happening or how transmission was or any of the effects that we were going to have to live with. When everybody was bundling up and wearing gloves and hazmat suits basically to just go outside. As I'll probably end up talking about, the fact that we here at Reverence made the decision that it was important for us to continue to serve the community. It was definitely something that was very uncomfortable about the idea of going out every day and potentially exposing my family. And I still have that concern on a daily basis, but there's a balance to the equation. I think we've figured it out to the best of our ability to stay safe. So we're all healthy, happy. We get tested regularly as well. So we just tested Monday and got results back on Friday, and we're all good.
And I presume when you say you're getting tested, you're actually getting tested, unlike somebody we know. And we'll also just talk about your amazing restaurant in a few minutes, which is a star on the New York restaurant scene. So we'll definitely talk about that. Let's go to Michael and hear Michael how he's doing.
Sure. Thank you, Sree. And I wish I were with Russell. His restaurant is great. His menu is fantastic, and it'd be a lot of fun to be there. Enjoying what he has to what he prepares. I'm in New York. I'm up in Westchester County. My family's doing great. I have 3 grown kids, and they are all theoretically out of the house, but in fact 2 are with us because they're working from remotely, and as a result they can be with us here, which is, if there's a silver lining of COVID, it is the possibility of actually having those who should have and would have been off on their own back with us for at least a short period of time.
I think there's a podcast and Michael giving advice to Russell about 18-month-old and the 18 plus. What can you warn him about, Michael?
Oh, I miss it. I gotta say, I mean, I love my kids. They're fantastic, but holding a 19 or 18-month old little boy, that's a really cool thing. So, or girl.
Yeah. Well, I'm just grateful to both of you for being here. We really are so interested in what's going to happen at the restaurant business. And so maybe what we can do is I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and then Fanni is going to be in charge. Just from both your points of view, each of you could just tell us what, so that people understand, what was the situation starting in March with the restaurant scene here, and what is your prognosis going forward? How worried are we about the future of not just Reverence, but all restaurants in New York? So we'll start with our chef first, and then we'll go to our business side expert. So please go ahead, Russell.
Well, interestingly enough, when we're doing our analysis now, we were starting to feel stress points and effects as early as January. New York, as you know, being sort of ground zero realistically for COVID, even though it may have had the first deaths on the West Coast, we definitively felt it here the hardest, and that's evident by all the data. We watched business drain out of it, and again, we were trying to prepare ourselves in the best possible way to be ready to serve the community and take care of the business the best that we could in the safest manner possible. And I talked to some physicians and some other friends about how we could do it safely, and we were planning on continuing to do service. And then, of course, the governor shut us down, and we all went into isolation. We were also just coming out of our first holiday season, which was, being a restaurant was only a month old at that time. We were only 3 months old at that point when we started the holiday season. It was a little bit slower than we had anticipated, but still, the business model that we created here was built around tremendous amount of efficiencies, high control of labor costs, high control of food and waste costs, which allowed us that ability to stay flexible and stay within our black numbers. We even took a week off in December or January to just let the staff sort of recoup and get their heads back together. We came back with a new menu. We got open, and then the shutdown. And it's been I hate using the word pivot, but it has been an enormous shift, redesigning, rebuilding, rethinking this business model, and ultimately, as I know we'll continue to discuss this evening, looking at what's next. What does, in our case, what does fine dining look like? And we were already pushing that ideology, but now it's really going to get crazy, I think.
Yeah, thank you, and we'll talk more about Reverence and everything it's had to go through. And thank you for what you've been doing for the community and for New York City. Michael, let's go to you. This is an article that you co-authored with Lena Goldberg and Jill Avery, restaurant revolution, how the industry is fighting to stay alive. That was in July. So I bet some things have changed since even you wrote this.
Yeah, so just to take a step back, so I teach a course at Harvard Business School on the restaurant industry, and our last in-person class was March 12th. I remember the day well. We had 3 wonderful guests, including Thomas Keller and Tim Ryan, who's the president of the Culinary Institute, and we had a robust discussion about the industry. And within a matter of 48 hours. Keller was closing French Laundry, closing Per Se, and we were seeing, the closures that Russell was describing across the industry. And so, where we were then, where this proceeded to evolve, and now where we are now. Unfortunately, and so sadly, I mean, the greatest threat I think that we have as an industry, and the greatest threat, frankly, to our country, in terms of our industry, are the sorts of folks like Russell, because if you were a large cap company that has significant resources, significant liquidity, if you are perhaps more in the quick service, fast casual segment, you have the ability to do takeout and delivery and do that easily and well, then this is just, in many cases, actually help them build business. But for those who are in more urban locations, within cities, those who are more fine dining, those who are more focused on, in restaurant dining, which was, obviously a huge component of our industry, the challenge is still enormous. And sadly, we've not seen the kind of support that we could have and should have seen from the federal government to really help this industry and other small businesses get through this. And just one more quick point on that. It's not, in fact, just about the restaurants themselves, but it's about their suppliers. It's about their employees. It's about the folks who bring the food, their distributors. I mean, there is, for every $1 of restaurant revenue, it's about another $3 of economic impact. And so this industry was the second largest private employer in this country. It's been hard hit. And those who have felt it the most, I think, are restaurateurs like Russell. And I admire so much what he has done, because he's just said, I'm going to reinvent. I'm going to go and figure this out. And more power to him.
Can you tell us what we're looking at in this graphic?
Sure. So in this graphic, restaurants historically have been low margin businesses, as we might know. And so this graphic shows the average cash reserves across different industries. And you see that restaurants at the very top with the red line have, this was, I think, done by JP Morgan, have had on average, about 16 days of cash. So restaurants have to go buy things and pay rent and do all the sorts of things that you would expect they would have to do. And then the customers will come in and buy their meals. But restaurants continually have to balance what they're paying out for expenses and what's coming in for cash. And that's a tight balancing for most restaurants, unless you're a large scale company. And
you're saying this is hard even in times were better, and so
these are good times.
Yeah, these are the good times. So we have someone here who's dealing with this every day. So Russell, can you just contrast how it was before, and how does this strike you, this chart?
Well, sadly, it's the staunch reality of what our industry exists. I mean, I think that in the last 6 months, I've been very fortunate to have joined several advocacy groups, as well as been granted opportunities to work on a handful of different advisory boards, and one of those being the Aspen Institute for Operations Under COVID, as well as the New York Hospitality Coalition, and as well as One Fair Wage and High Roads Kitchen. And one of the things that we say and talk about in every meeting, during the course of every week, is that we have a systemic broken system, and that the restaurant industry as a whole, the business model as a whole, was horrifyingly bad. And you can look at the chart and it just screams it right there. It took all of 2 weeks for every restaurant in the country to implode. And that's not smart business. That's not a good business model. That's a broken system that has to change. We're in a place in the time now where we have an opportunity to completely resurrect and build it in the best way possible. And I'm now sort of thinking about what's next and how the industry can move forward. And I certainly, at its core, I mean, we're hospitality people. We choose every day to get up and be of service creatively, and to serve other human beings, to serve mankind in the best way that we know how. I mean, I didn't build this restaurant as a massive moneymaker, because restaurants don't make a lot of money. I did this because this is what I grew up to do. This is who I am as a person. This is how I choose to live my life within this industry, and surrounded by these people and doing this type of work. And it's horrifying to think of you know, again, we had a broken system. It was a bad system. It still exists. I don't want to go back to the old bad behaviors. I want to see the restaurant industry evolve and become better. And there are a lot of very glaring, clear issues that I think the public has now gotten to witness, not just from the aspect of where your food comes from, and those people that are producing it, and those people that have been forced into almost slave labor and treated poorly to do that, to the guy that brings you your food, and the hard work that he has to go through, and the fact that he risks his life, and the fact that sometimes it's not easy to get basic necessity. I mean, does everybody remember not so long ago it was really hard to find flour? You know, these are all those things that at its core are problems with the generalized system. And we have a choice. Do we go back to the old broken methods, or do we go forward? Here at Reverence, we're certainly trying to do that through what I call a T: transparency, efficacy, and advocacy. And that for us, that means that we're going to put out food that we can show in a traceable way, what's important for us, the stories that surround the inspiration about that food, where it comes from. The prime example, I took my crew just recently. We've had a trout farmer that we've been buying trout from for the last year, and we finally got an opportunity to go and see his location. 70-year-old farm, 4 generations of family that have been running this fish farm, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, and without a doubt has the best trout I've ever had in my entire life. And their story matched with our story, and the love and affection that we can give into creating a dish out of that fish that this guy hand raises and put it on the plate. People eat it and they can tell the difference. And those are the things that are so incredibly important for us as restaurateurs to continue to be able to tell those stories. The litany of problems that, you know, from the city bureaucracy, the city's lack of leadership, the government's lack of leadership and assistance, the rent equation, which is probably one of the biggest issues that we keep sidestepping and kicking the can down the road, that is going to rear its ugly head and bite all of us. I know we as a restaurant are at consistent war with our landlord, and none of it makes sense. So yeah, it's a very different time.
There's a lot to be said.
Sadly not pleasant.
Oh, thank you very much, Russell. I'm going to leave you with Fanni, who's going to ask both of you some questions, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Go ahead, Fanni.
Hello. So I wanted to start with a question for Mr. Jackson about your experience in COVID, during COVID with your restaurant. Like, how was your relationship with your landlord? How were you able to reconcile these differences? And what types of struggles have you seen?
Well, sadly, we don't have a great landlord. We not unlike a lot of restaurateurs here in the city, have a landlord that sort of sees the world through a certain lens, and it's not to say that it's advantageous, but it's not even fair to us. I consider myself a straight shooter. I speak very plainly. If I say something, I'm going to do it. I sort of wear my heart on my sleeve, and I try to be. I don't try. I am as earnest as I can possibly be at any given point in time, and even when it comes to the tough realities of finance sometimes. And as a restaurateur and as a creative, that's really difficult sort of hat to wear. Normally you want to leave that to a business partner, but I'm a one-man army here. So it's challenging sometimes. We don't have sadly, we don't have a solution for the rent equation issue. And the issues that we've had in regards to help from the federal government, and the infighting and the issues between Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio, and sort of the Russian roulette game that they're playing with all of our businesses and lives, is quite frustrating and difficult. I'm trying to put a happy face on about it, but I think if it wasn't drunk most of the time, that I would probably be suicidal. No, seriously, it's difficult. It's really, really difficult, and I don't have answers for them. I wish I did. The only thing that I think is going to truly work is that everybody equally shares the pain. And that, and I've been saying this since the beginning of COVID, that there are going to be no winners in this. We are all losing to some degree or another. And it's all of us as a community that have to come together and do what's best for the survival of our community, and not just the individual.
And Fanni, if I could just pick up a bit on what Russell was saying. So we have an expectation from consumers about a value of what they would pay for a meal, whether it's a burger, pizza, or a fine dining experience like Russell's. And we have landlords who have an expectation of what they need to do to collect rent so they can pay their mortgages and cover their expenses and presumably make a profit. And we have suppliers who have built their businesses on the basis, like the fishermen that Russell was describing, and that they would get a certain pricing for what they are bringing to a restaurant. And so we have we have our team members, our employees, and because restaurants are very labor intensive for the most part, which is why in part quick service and fast casual tend to now to do better because they can rely on fewer employees. We have this model that Russell's referring to that has been built up over the years, with everybody having their economic assumptions about what they'll pay for a meal, what they'll get for their supply, what they'll get for rent, and all of that is challenged, and it's been challenged for a while. The average margin of an average restaurant across this country is somewhere between 4 and 6 cents per dollar. And so, that's not a highly profitable business. As a result, anything that happens, whether it's an increase in wage rates or an increase in rent or an increase in the cost of supplies, immediately puts pressure on that bottom line. And then the question is, what do you do? Do you cut down portions? Do you change your ingredients to lesser quality ingredients? And so, you know, and chefs like Russell don't do that because the integrity of what they do is so important to them. And so it creates, you know, an extraordinary constraint. Then you have a pandemic, and oh my God, you're in a situation in which you know, everything grounds to a halt. But the landlord has to still make the mortgage payment, and the supplier said, "Well, I delivered this stuff to you 2 weeks before the pandemic. I got to get paid for that," and it just has a cascading effect. It's a very challenging moment for this industry.
No, it's definitely no short of a crisis. And what I'm curious about is how you both believe, what is the government's responsibility to uphold these businesses, since the restaurant is such an integral part of the economy?
I'll go first. I mean, so the first stimulus package, the CARES Act, had some useful components in it, including Paycheck Protection Program. It was poorly designed for the industry because it basically mandated that 75% of what was going to, the utilization of those funds would be for labor, but that's not the construct of how restaurants go. That was amended through the Flexibility Act to reduce that percentage. But we're now at a point where, you know, as we all know, I mean, the White House and Congress are at odds, and Democrats and Republicans are at odds, and we're not getting the kind of support that we should. Both the Independent Restaurant Coalition and the National Restaurant Association have worked extraordinarily hard to try to, and with a proposal that would be much more advantageous, certainly for this industry. And you know, there's a House bill, there's a Senate potential. Those have not been reconciled, and we're at this stalemate. And we're at this stalemate that I think, you know, is just going to be increasingly devastating for the industry. And again, I want to emphasize, I think, you know, the McDonald's and Domino's and Chipotle and others will work it out, and in many cases they're doing better. The ones who are really hit hard are the ones like Russell, the diner, the coffee house, those who had assumed that an office building next to their restaurant will be fully occupied and people will come in for a drink or a dinner or a lunch or coffee in the morning. And those are the ones that you know, are not going to see immediate recovery. And if they don't get support from the government, they may not make it.
Yeah, it's incredibly sad when you see the weekly death list of all the restaurants. I mean, we're about to lose a 100-year-old hotel at the end of this month. We've lost restaurants that are over 50 to 75 years old. I mean, we're losing elements of our culture, and a lot of it, you know, there's that element, an aspect of we don't have the clients, we don't have the tourism, we're not turning the dollar like we should. But I think that sadly the rent component and the real estate issue is probably the biggest killer of them all. And that goes beyond the aspect of operations. There are, you know, for us, it's the PPP helped for a matter of a couple of weeks. We've been fortunate enough to have been awarded a handful of grants, and those helped for an additional couple of weeks. But they helped to us for preparations for indoor dining, which again started or didn't even start, ran it to the line, and then got canceled. And now we're into 25%, which realistically, for a fine dining restaurant like ours, that for a 18-seat restaurant, that's 4 people that we can have in here. And to cook, you know, not that I don't love cooking for 4 people, but to bring in a staff and do all the work that, you know, it's like there's no difference for us between cooking for 4 people and cooking for 40 people, which is what a normal night would be for us. And it's still the same amount of labor. It's still the same amount of effort. And again, not that we wouldn't love to do it, but that those numbers don't crunch out. So it's, yeah. And again, we're not the only ones that are having to live through this. Everybody is, except for those handful of restaurants that are capable of doing outdoor dining in an excessive way. But that obviously is going to be coming to a drastic end any day now. For those that have, the Oyster Bar in Grand Central open and then close because they can only do 81 seats a day, or 81 seats per turn. And I don't know how many seats that is, how many seats they actually have in that restaurant, but the quantity of people that were coming through and sitting down and eating didn't predicate them continuing to stay open. So they went ahead and just shut back down. And I mean, that's fortunate that you have the funding to be capable of icing yourself out like that, and you have a landlord that's willing to work with you and work through those ups and downs. But I can't begin to tell you how many friends I've watched just pull up a moving truck and load all their equipment up and hand the keys over and walk out. And I know guys that I have a good friend who owned a beautiful little robota bar down in the West Village, spent 3 years putting it together, pulled this great team together, and was an exceptional restaurant, just an exceptional restaurant. And 3 months into the pandemic, they just had to go ahead and shut down, and I more than most people know exactly what he's going through. And my heart just hurts. My heart just hurts for him. And it's amazing that I actually sleep every day because the fear that I have for myself and for my staff and my family, we are all in on this. Every dime that I have, everything is into this. And when the pandemic happened, we got to that event horizon of, well, do we fold it up, file bankruptcy and take our licks, and then hopefully in the next 10 years, maybe we could do something again? Or do we go ahead and keep digging a bigger hole and keep trusting that somebody will help us in the right ways for us to get back to doing business in a unique way? And so we sort of are walking that path, and it's not a pretty, again, it's very much a walk through a nuclear garden.
And I've seen the New York Times article saying that upwards of up to 2/3 of New York City small business restaurants could close, which is a staggering number, which leads me to my next question of how does the restaurant industry compare or contrast to other industries during COVID? And I know you touched upon this before, but why is the restaurant industry so integral to the United States, especially since it's the second largest employer? Starting with Mr. Kaufman.
Why is it so integral? Well, I mean, restaurants are, the cornerstone of this country. I mean, if you look across the country, small towns, big cities, it's restaurants where people go and relax. It's restaurants who support the local charities and Little League. It's restaurants that are really provide the backbone of how communities come together. And restaurants employ not only people, but as we talked about, I mean, they pay rent, they pay utilities, they pay suppliers, they provide to communities a robust sense of presence and economic impact. And so, this industry has been hit so hard, for one major reason, which is it brings people together. And in a time of COVID, that is, that's a concern. So whether it's a bar or it's a restaurant, bringing people together, especially indoors, has a certain risk associated with it. And so that's playing out. Retailers have also been hard hit. probably not as hard hit, and because they are a product company as opposed to an experience company. And so as an experience, the whole notion of what restaurants reflect, unless it's, you're a drive-through or drive-in, in which case, it's more of a transactional, is an experience. If you sit at the counter at Russell's restaurant and you're talking to him and you're enjoying your friends and company and you're sampling interesting foods, it's part of what makes it happen. And if it's 18 people, it works for him if he can turn that a couple times. And if it's 4 people, it's challenging. So restaurants, the very fact that restaurants are this cornerstone and are in a sense the least productive of industries, and by that I mean it takes the most number of people per dollar virtually of any industry in this country, any segment of this country, makes it that much more vulnerable in a situation like this.
Hi, folks. I'm just stepping in here. This is such a great conversation. I'm learning so much. People are saying so in the comments as well. I wanted to show you some of the comments, and we're in a conversation about restaurants under COVID. My co-host is Fanni, one of my students at Stony Brook School of Journalism. Our guests are Michael Kaufman, a professor at Harvard Business School, who's a former chair of the board of the other NRA, the better NRA, the National Restaurant Association, and Russell Jackson, chef, owner of Reverence NYC, a beautiful restaurant in Harlem that's bringing a new kind of cuisine, a new kind of energy to the restaurant scene in New York. Let's just say hello to folks. Jonathan's watching from the East Village, where restaurants have been closing right and left. Let me ask both of you a favorite restaurant down in the Village for both of you.
Oh, well, for me, it goes all the way back to 5 Points area. And Vic's down in the East Village. Vic's is a restaurant that I dearly love. And I originally, when it was 5 Points, before it was Vic's, and Chef Meyer, they've been mentors and friends for over 20 years of my career. And the food, Hillary, the chef down there, the food is spectacular. I've never had a bad meal there. In 20 years, I've never had a bad meal there. So that's, East Village.
We got that. Michael?
I'm going to move slightly over neighborhood-wise to a restaurant called King. In part because I wrote a case for it for HBS, but it's 3 women who created a restaurant patterned after the River Cafe in London, and it's an extraordinary fine dining restaurant that has extraordinary food and great hospitality. So, and they've been like Russell, they've been trying to figure it out along the way and just trying to keep the doors open, some outdoor dining. And now the hope is that they'll be able to pull through the winter.
We hope so. Doug is watching from the Bay Area, where I'm about to pick up my carry-out order, and that's something that obviously restaurants are doing here in New York as well. Anil's watching from Atlanta. Deborah is watching from Asheville. Most concerned about the people making the food and not wearing masks. I figured out a few local restaurants that are doing good things. Only eat outdoors or pick up. So mostly I cook at home. Is New York considered have a much higher standard about the staff wearing masks, Russell?
Well, right now the mandate is for any restaurant that are in operations that you have to have a mask on, and because we also have a mandatory mask law as well, so you just can't walk down the street without wearing a mask or being socially distanced. We at Reverence, we have a code of conduct that we ask people to wear their masks when. So for when people come in to pick up their orders, we actually meet them on the sidewalk, and we have their orders prepared, and they must stay masked. As we prepare to shift back into indoor dining, we have several procedures that we'll be taking in respect to mask wearing, and then how we'll be doing and creating service. The staff will be masked and shielded, which is I'm still kind of trying to think through the challenge of tasting and continuing to smell, because chefs have to have their senses when they're cooking. So it's an additional new challenge that we're going to have to try to consider. But we've designed a system where the way this restaurant is laid out, we're up to 8 to 10 feet away from people. And we're going to have these little, almost like masquerade style masks that when we approach people to place their food and to talk to them about the dish that we've made for them, they'll be able to raise this mask up instead of having to put an apparatus back on their face. Every guest that comes through will also sanitize their mask before they leave, because we have a phone vault system here, which does a UV sanitization process for us. So we're about providing service. And the guest that asked about people not wearing masks during food preparations, it's not. The jury's still really out scientifically as to whether or not if you sneeze on somebody's food directly or you excrete germs into somebody's food, if you can get COVID. There is no scientific data at this point that's supporting that. It's the same as touch. The only thing and the only way that that we understand scientifically that you can currently catch COVID is through aerosol transmission. And yes, they did talk about the extension of up to 12 feet, but part of that extension that the CDC provided about up to 12 feet was flawed in their testing. They used an old test from, I think it was 1994, and adopted it for a new standard. And in turn, that information is incorrect because it's not based on sort of current HVAC and restaurant operations. We actually had one of our COVID Aspen Institute specialists come through and have a conversation with us and look at our space specifically, and sort of gave us that yeah, you're doing all the right things for the way you're preparing to operate with diners indoor. And we have, as you can see, the little white tower that's behind me here is again, working with Phone Soap, they created a high quality filtration system that's actually a washable technology that's really cool, so we don't have to spend $1 bazillion on HEPA filters. But we have 4 of those units that are running in this place, and that is well in excess of over 1,200 square feet that this thing can process the air in the room for every hour. And this space is only about 900 square feet. So we're exceeding those standards. Plus we have 2 different interior HVAC systems that are circulating the air in the room. So for us, things like, the barriers and things like you're seeing in other restaurants, there's a level of misconception and misunderstanding that's going on. Again, wearing a mask is really kind of the best way to protect yourself. And again, washing your hands on a regular basis and getting enough sleep, eating healthy, good quality food, a little exercise. Those are the ways to not get COVID. Who knew?
Let's just go to some more comments, and then we'll go to Fanni for some more questions. My mom's watching from Kerala, India. Hi, Amma. Love you very much. Have any of you been to India?
No.
Okay, we've got to get you there. You're foodies, so you will love India. Paula is watching from Tallahassee in Florida. Anybody here been there? Okay, so India and Tallahassee, we're gonna get you there. Someone else is watching from New Delhi, India. Jonathan saying that in New York, a lot of restaurants were already pushed economically because of high rents. We talked about that. Kayla says, great show, guys. So interesting to hear firsthand how restaurants have been affected by COVID. Shocking, really. And we have Alex saying, hi, everyone. I hope everything is going well. And Jonathan's pointing out it's the Roosevelt Hotel that's in trouble.
Roosevelt Hotel is about to go away on the 31st.
Are you serious?
100 years.
45th and Madison.
100 years in operation. They will be closing for good on the 31st.
There's an annual conference of the American Society of Journalists and Authors that I've spoken at for 12, 13 years in a row. So sad to hear. That's a historic hotel to lose that. And Anil in Atlanta says, yeah, chef, if you, first he says, restaurants triggered the great Harlem Renaissance. If you ever decide to relocate, please consider Atlanta. Your rent will be half of what you'd be paying in New York City. I'll find you the right spot.
Yeah. I'd have to have that conversation with my wife.
Michael says it's really interesting. The restaurant has taken a really big industry and much bigger hit with the winter second wave coming. Steve's watching from Philly, another great restaurant town.
Yeah.
And great to have him here. Charles is watching from Chicago. Charles is a regular viewer and a sponsor of the show. He's an author of a book called The Inventor in You, about how you can have a step-by-step guide to inventing or making your own inventions. And lots of other folks coming in here and tagging. Here's Alex saying these student-produced shows are making you regret not taking your new class, Sree. Thank you, Alec. Always welcome to sit in on what we're doing. And Jonathan says, I've been taking out from restaurants I used to frequent, but not enough for doing that. Is there a reason not more restaurants are doing that, Russell?
I'm sorry, say that once more?
No, that not enough restaurants are doing takeout.
Well, here, again, this is that really, really difficult choice that restaurateurs have to make. First off, you have to have the willingness and the understanding of your crew to be willing to step up, put themselves at risk, and to do this. One of the issues that we have here at Reverence is the fact that, we're built as an indoor fine dining restaurant. And I hate the word pivot, but the pivot for us to redefine ourselves with takeout and continue to hold the standards, the high standards that we've tried to set for ourselves as an interior dining restaurant, have been quite difficult. It's a different price point. It's a different business model altogether. The first month I spent something like $2,000 in packaging. As a green tech restaurant, it's something that utterly strangles us to death. The fact that we know that we're producing landfill and that it's just going out the door. And we've done that. We've spent more money on high quality packaging, all recyclable, all ecological material, to make sure that even though we know that we're producing food at a loss, but that we're keeping our ethics within line, and making sure that we're hopefully leaving the world in a better place. For us to do outdoor dining is a virtual impossibility. I won't even go down the rabbit hole of how the city rolled the program out, because it was an absolute catastrophe. Highly dysfunctional, highly erratic, very, very poorly executed. It was utter anarchy in trying to roll that program out. And I'm happy that they've gone ahead and decided that they're going to make it a year-round component, and that they're going to allow restaurants to continue to do so. With planning and investment, we could do outdoor dining. It would be an adjustment to our business model, our primary business model, but something that we could do. But we don't have tables and chairs, and it's like, here's a shocker, people, but a chair for a restaurant. Your chair at home, you may have spent $100, $200. Chair for a restaurant, a good quality chair, could be $300 to $500 a piece. And you think about a restaurant that has 300 seats, you're going to like signing that check, right? And that's why you see so many restaurants that have those galvanized steel horseshoe chairs that my wife hates seeing everywhere. Because they're the inexpensive chair that you can paint and make any color, and very utilitarian. But yeah, it's for us to do that, for us to provide outdoor dining, it would completely, it's like, and for me to do something like that, I know that we could eventually get to the place, as we have gotten to with takeout. Like, I'd put our takeout up against anybody's in town, and I think we'll whoop their asses. And we've gotten really good at it, which is horrible to say, because we're not that kind of a restaurant, but we have become that. And I know that we could do that with outdoor dining, but again, it's one of those things where I would be setting myself up ultimately for the potential failure in setting a precedence and an idea and an IP that I would ultimately end up having to roll back. And that would be, it would be hard to have to answer those questions about, well, why aren't you doing this anymore? Or why can't we have that anymore? And it's like, well, it's not what we really do. And so instead of shooting myself in the foot, we are trying to define ourselves within the confines of what we do. And maybe it sounds a little bit narrow, but in reality, it truly is, I feel, the best possible choice that we could have made for ourselves. And how, and again, we'll see how it rolls out for us. It could be abject failure, or it could be the saving grace for us. Again, we're now at the place where we're adding on new things, because as the winter changes and we're still figuring out how we're going to be comfortable with doing indoor dining, how customers are going to be comfortable with doing indoor dining. And I think one of the biggest challenges, and nobody's really spoken about, and that we're trying to have more conversations about, is the fact that the biggest issue when I talk to my staff and I say, okay, guys, I want to go back to indoor dining. I'm thinking about this date of reopening. How do you feel about it? They all, they're like, whatever you need to do, chef, I'm here, I'll do it, but I'm a little nervous about it. And the biggest problem that they have is their fear about diners conduct. And there isn't a day that we don't read or hear a story about bad behavior being demonstrated by customers in the field. And that's really hard to swallow. And I have story after story after story after story of bad behavior being demonstrated by customers during the time of COVID. Like, it's zero common sense. And I get that, like, people just want to go back to the way it was. But just like 9/11, the world's different. It's changed, and it's changed forever. And people have to get accepting to the fact that we're going to have to live a different way for an extended period of time and for the foreseeable future. Even after we get a vaccine, there's going to be a long period of time for people to get it, and for it to saturate the public, and then how long does it really last? All of these questions are still being answered, and people just have to, again, capitulate to the idea that it's a different world, and we have to act differently. We have to be more accepting. We have to be more loving, and as much as New Yorkers, have the people in the outside world perceive New Yorkers as like, fuck you, no way. The reality is that New Yorkers are really, really loving, cool people, and super accepting of so much crazy. But you got to just take that. You got to make that extra effort right now, and you've got to do it for an extended period of time. And for God's sakes, tip your service people. If it's the guy that brings you your newspaper, or gives you a coffee, or brings your delivery or takeout or whatever, tip them graciously, because I'll promise you they've taken a shellacking from somebody for something earlier or later. It's coming.
We are almost out of time. Fanny, do you have a question for Michael, and then we'll wrap up?
Actually, yes. So going off of your message of how, change, especially during the pandemic, has become more of a necessity rather than something that people would really like to do, would you have any advice to restaurant owners to delay closing their doors?
Well, that's a hard question, Fanny,
Yeah.
because it really depends on the individual restaurant and what options they might have. I would say a few things. Number one, certainly if they haven't already, they should explore other ways to provide some revenue to keep some team members still employed. I would say if they are independent restaurants like Russell's, I mean, certainly engagement with the community is really important because there's a huge loyalty within the community to keep restaurants going, and I think that's critical. I do think that, as has been some of the chat comments about the second wave, there's definitely going to be a second wave. At the same time, I'm encouraged by some of the rapid testing technology that's, I gather, is coming down fairly soon. And I think that could be really helpful for the industry if we can get that out there sooner than later, so that we have an ability to not only check our team, but check those who are going to come into the restaurant. But holding on is critical, and finding creative ways to generate revenue, engaging with the local community, and really developing a relationship with those who are living in the community to say, we're in this together, let's work through it together, and let's be responsible together. And hopefully that will create enough of a revenue base to be able to keep going. It's a challenge.
Thank you. We have just a couple more comments. Anita says, yes, crazy, wonderful city, but New Yorkers are generous, large-hearted, and solid. And please tip, tip, tip. We have a suggestion here from our friend Jonathan Borstein, who says that you should be tipping 25%. Is his recommendation. And aside from my dislike for dining outdoors, what stops me now is the other diners, and people are worried about that. Let's ask both our guests to give us a final thought. Each, Russell, will go to you first.
My final thought is again, like I was saying before, is be patient with each other. Try your best to support as many of these businesses. We have clients that we've never seen before that have shown up and have just sort of maxed out their order for us and said, hey, we just wanted to this week or this month support you. We go and we choose every week a different business to support. And we made it a special trip to be able to come to you. And we're truly grateful, and tell those people that you're doing that. Remind them that the work that they're doing and the effort that they're putting out, the risks that they're taking, is appreciated. We know for us, when it's been really, really tough, that those words of gratitude have been the things that have gotten us to come back right stronger the next day. That, and support us, please. We're doing some really cool stuff. We're about to launch next week our online cooking class that you can do in real time. There's our website and reservation system. You can order takeout for this coming weekend, which is up and live. We've got actually a really cool Thanksgiving Day program that is incredible, that we're really, really super excited about, and some other surprises that are coming down the line. And as you get to know us and learn more about us, you'll see that we're the real deal. And we really hope that smarter minds prevail and work out some details for us to be able to stick around, because again, we're here to be a service to the community. I could have built this restaurant anywhere in the United States, but I chose this community because I felt that it needed me, and what I learned is that I needed it. So I'm really proud to be here, and thank you. Thanks for having me, Sree. Thank you. Thanks, guys, really, very much. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak out today.
We can't let you go without asking about Eddie Van Halen. He is listed on your menu as an inspiration.
Yeah, so every week I cook based on stories from my past and pop culture, and what I learned through Dominique Crin is my best friend and the godmother of my son, and one of our advisors here. And if you don't know who she is, look her up or check out her thing on Netflix. She's what I learned from her was how to tap into my inspiration behind why I choose to cook what I cook. And what I learned from her, 35 years into being a chef, was that music was that defining inspiration for me, and that it's always been the thing that makes me create. With Edward's passing, it's been a bit of a hard emotional pill to swallow, as we've lost some really, really amazing, talented people in the last year. I'm going to try to finish this up without crying, but we wanted to, immediately we knew that it was important that we did some food in his honor this weekend. So all of the dishes are inspired by either songs or things that he said, and respect for him as an artist, and for somebody that influenced so much of my childhood.
Wow, thank you so much. And rare to see him called Edward Van Halen, but nice to see that. And I tell people who haven't heard much of Van Halen, you may also know him from the iconic guitar solo that he had on "Beat It" by Michael Jackson.
13 different showcase pieces that he did for other artists that people have no idea that he had done. Highly, highly talented man, and just share this little piece real fast. A good buddy of mine, Chef Monty Nall, who is an amazing pastry chef, started Monty's Bakery in Los Angeles. Was originally Michael Jackson's one of several of Michael Jackson's private chefs, and he shared a story after Eddie's passing about his interaction with Eddie the night that he played Dodger Stadium backing up Michael Jackson, and that in the after show, Monty was putting food out, and Eddie walked in with Valerie Bertinelli, and he was talking to Bertinelli and saying, I wasn't good, and oh my God, I can't believe this. Nobody recognized that it was me, and I suck. This is just, I can't believe I did this, and this was a mistake. And Monty walked over to him and said, hey, look, I was standing in the crowd outside, and I got to tell you, like, everybody knew it was you. Like, don't doubt that. Like, your playing was beautiful. It was inspirational. Everybody loved the fact that, oh my God, Eddie Van Halen got up on stage with Michael Jackson. And I had no idea that Eddie Van Halen had played that part on Michael Jackson's album. You had the king of pop and the guitar rock god on stage at one time. It was a point and a moment in history that was truly unique. And this chef got to step up and remind Eddie Van Halen that, hey, you're a rock god. You just did something historic. Walk with that. And he turned it around. The rest of the night, he was happy and enjoying himself, and all because Monty Nall got to step up and say, hey, Eddie, good job. That's what a chef will do for you.
What a great story. Now, Michael, top that story as your final thought.
I think Russell said it all.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Where can we find more research and the work that you're doing and follow that?
There's a whole series of case studies about different restaurants and different restaurant issues that are available through HBS Publishing, and more on the way, writing some cases now with some African-American protagonists who have done large scale and small scale. And so I want to bring that out as part of the course. So that's one way. I guess the other thing I would just say is not only, as we've talked about, not only support restaurants directly, but think about letting your members of Congress know that there are some real issues here and that they need to get resolved. And, we've been very active at the National Restaurant Association to get restaurateurs to reach out. But if folks like the folks who, chatted on this live stream said, this is important to us too, I think that could be super helpful.
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the things we also do is we go off the air and then we do a debrief with the guest, because this is a student-produced show. But let's do it right here. What did you think of the job Fanni did today, Russell?
Great questions. Like I get interviewed quite frequently, especially obviously in the last 6 months, almost weekly. And good questions. That was they're in depth. You're not asking you didn't ask me the same question I've heard consistently over the last 6 months. So keep at it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Any feedback to a fellow professor and his?
No, you're a great host, and Fanni, I thought she did great. I thought all the production folks, it was very professional and managed, and done super well.
Well, thank you very much, both of you, for giving us this time, and I'm very proud of my students. This was a team effort. We had Fanni on camera, but we had Hyoju, Iryna, and Nick off camera, and they did a great job. And here is someone praising Fanni as well. So go Fanni. And thank you very much, everybody. We wish you the very best at Russell, at your restaurant, and Michael for your work. Thank you very much, everybody. I even learned that HBS has a track on food and restaurants, so which is fantastic.
The first course on the industry and the history of HBS. So I'm happy that they finally understand that this actually is a pretty large industry that's worth taking a look at.
Yeah, that's just great to know. So thanks very much, everybody. We'll say good night, and we'll be back again every night with another edition of my global social stream and show around various